Those watching this lecture series would recollect that in the last lecture, we had discussed about the origins of international investment law, where we saw that the subject evolved out of colonialism. We had also discussed that many concepts that evolved out of colonialism and imperialism are used even in the latest of the investment treaties. In this lecture, we delved into the evolution of international investment law in the first phase, that is between 1870 and 1940. But before we do that, those watching this video may refer to two interesting papers on the origins before 1870. One by Kate Miles, who is the author of the book that we referred to in the last lecture, and the other by Anne Charlotte Martineau. The two papers are International Investment Law, Origins, Imperialism, and Conceptualizing the Environment, Colorado Journal of International Environmental Law and Policy, and A Forgotten Chapter in the History of International Commercial Arbitration, The Slave Trades Dispute Settlement System, published in the Leiden Journal of International Law. The precise citation is given here. Those watching may refer to. The first lecture of this lecture series was mainly based on Chapter 1 of Kate Miles' book, whose content is more or less similar to the first paper. The second paper above is equally interesting. It traces the origin of the present system of IIL and dispute resolution system in IIL to slave trade in the 16th to the 18th centuries. It states that the institution of judges conservators established to resolve disputes out of slave trade was the precursor to arbitral tribunals established nowadays for resolving disputes through international arbitration. Interesting conclusions are drawn in the paper. 1. Contrary to the widely held belief that international law came to the rescue of slaves by advocating its abolition, international law created, supported, perpetrated, and even legitimized slave trade regime for at least 3 centuries. The author also speaks of private dimensions of formal and informal imperialism. This is important and interesting. Colonialism has its roots in corporations affecting economic and political control over the Third World. The East India Company in India is an apt example. The author is therefore correct in saying that there is nothing neutral, normal, or apolitical in investment law and adjudication. So, the evolution of international law is not about good faith, treaties, and precedents, but about blood, sweat, and tears. Now, coming to the evolution of international investment law from 1870 onwards, this phase saw two prominent developments. One was the entrancement of the expropriation doctrine. Standards for compensation due to expropriation were developed. For example, the Convention of Friendship, Commerce, and Extradition between United States and between United States and Switzerland, 1850, stated in Article 2, Subarticle 3 as follows. In case of expropriation for purposes of public utility, the citizens of one of the two countries residing or established in the other shall be placed upon an equal footing with the citizens of the country in which they reside, with respect to indemnities for damages they may have sustained. Thus, the standard for compensation on account of expropriation was national treatment. In this phase, expropriation was considered lawful if certain conditions were met. That is, if it was carried out for a public purpose. 2. It was non-arbitrary or non-discriminatory. And 3. Prompt, adequate, and effective compensation was paid. It would be interesting to note that the phrase prompt, adequate, and effective was coined in 1940 by United States Secretary of State Cordell Hull in diplomatic correspondence in Mexico. This became the Hull formula. Interestingly, Hull was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1945 for playing a pivotal role in establishing the United Nations. Now, another development in this period, that is between 1870 to 1914, was the entrenchment of the international minimum standards and the national treatment doctrines, and the tension between these concepts. While US and other European powers subscribed to the international minimum standard rule, the countries in the Third World, especially Latin American countries, advocated the national treatment rule. Their argument was that international minimum standards rule impinged on their sovereignty, and foreign powers could not be afforded a treatment that was beyond what a state offered to its citizens. National treatment was also the second limb of the famous Calvo Doctrine. This doctrine arose from the ideas of Carlos Calvo, a jurist from Argentina whose ideas were first published in 1868. The first limb of the Calvo Doctrine was that state sovereignty precluded other states from interfering into the affairs of another state, either through diplomatic channels or by force. Although the Calvo Doctrine came to be looked upon with disfavor by Western nations, it has had a considerable influence in the evolution of international investment law. This is possibly a precursor to the local exhaustion rule in international investment law. More on the first phase in the next lecture.